Welcome to beautiful Thursday Island. Firstly, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Murulag people on which we work, live, and recognise their continuing connection to the land, water, and community. I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging for their contribution they make. Thursday Island, or also known as TI, is an island of the Torres Straits which is located approximately 39 kilometres north of the Cape York Peninsula or 1,083 kilometres from Townsville. This beautiful island accommodates for roughly 3,000 people, 2,000 of those being of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent. The island was a coaling station for shipping, quarantine point, and pearl shell industry headquarters, and in 1892 protecting entry from Port Kennedy on the south side shoreline. However, the fort was diminished in the 1920s. The island has maintained its varied retail and commercial sectors along with the TAFE, High School, State Primary School. Victoria Memorial Institute Hall was diminished in 1990s to make way for new council. Most of the main public buildings on the island have been built or rebuilt in the last 2 decades to withstand cyclones. These include the Gabtui Cultural Centre and the courthouse. The Thursday Island Hospital provides vital medical care for the whole Torres Strait Islander group, as the nearest base hospital is at Cairns, 850 kilometres away. The primary healthcare facility available to around 17 healthcare centres in the Torres Strait Islands is the Thursday Island Hospital. It provides a wide range of healthcare services with 26 general medical beds and 6 maternity beds. The Clinical Service Capacity Framework is a framework that outlines the clinical services and the healthcare facilities and the services they may provide. This framework is scored out of 1 to 6, with Level 1 managing the least complex patients and Level 6 managing the highest level of patient complexity. Thursday Island scores a Level 3 for maternity and neonatal services. Therefore, this facility provides community and inpatient care for antenatal and postnatal women and babies without identified risk factors. The health service offers a 24-hour care by registered midwives or health practitioners and encourages women to birth locally when low risk. Furthermore, elective caesarean section on women at or beyond 39 weeks without complication is available. Telehealth services are available for linking with other facilities via video conference for patients if required. The women of TI face multiple challenges when accessing maternity care, which should be discussed. Thursday Island is off the coast of the Cape Shore Peninsula, and due to the location of the island being a rural facility, access to adequate healthcare is minimised. The island only has access to one healthcare facility which offers care for low-risk pregnancies. Unfortunately, if a woman is classified with having a high-risk pregnancy, she may have to travel to other healthcare facilities for antenatal, the birth and postnatal care. The closest tertiary facility is the Cairns-based hospital with a CSCF Level 4. Travelling to Cairns for these women can be extremely costly, with an average return flight is approximately $350. Flying from Thursday Island is the only option these women have, and in emergency situations, RFDS services are available but extremely costly for the government. However, the weather may impact the retrieval process. Living in the tropics in the wet season with the risk of cyclones, floods, and increased rain can impact the flights and the airport remaining open. Other costs include costs of hotel, travel to and from the hospital, which is subsidised with the Patient Travel Subsidy Scheme. Patients are generally eligible for a subsidy if they have been referred by a clinician to a specialty service that is not available at their local public hospital. However, this service only provides $60 cover per night. This amount is not enough to cover the ongoing expenses these women face while travelling for care. To continue, these women may need to leave their other children behind to be taken care of by either her partner or other family members. The cost of living with multiple children increases, and the household prices also increase, causing more stress for the women and their families. Due to the lack in healthcare, this can pose a risk of being not culturally safe for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. The connection to country is very sacred during birth, and taking that opportunity away from these women can impact their overall view on the healthcare service and birth. This spiritual connection cannot be maintained when these women are forced to retrieve care from other facilities such as Cairns Base Hospital. Furthermore, on Thursday Island, multiple languages other than English are spoken. Most commonly, Yaplatok is spoken according to the census. Being transferred to a tertiary facility may present a barrier in communication. This may impact the woman's ability to speak up by the feeling of shame. Also, the enhancement of white coat syndrome would be an issue from the trauma this culture experienced from the stolen generation. During the stolen generation, social workers were given the authority to enter Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander homes and remove children that didn't meet the white society roles. Because of this trauma, intergenerational trauma had occurred from the elders passing down their stories to the younger generation, therefore creating a theme of fear around the white healthcare facilities. Due to the extreme cultural shock, these women feel unsupported and frightened of labour and birth. This is supported by when women are transferred to another hospital, they only transfer the patient and not the partner or the family. Additionally, it's expensive to pay for additional accommodation for the family. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people unfortunately have a lower socio-economic level than non-Indigenous Australians. The social determinants of health impact this due to lower educational levels and access to education. According to the 2016 census, on Thursday Island, 42.1% of people were attending an educational institution. Of these, 24.1% were in primary school, 22.3% in secondary school, and 8.8% in a tertiary or technical institution. Of people aged 15 and over in Thursday Island, 17.4% reported have completed Year 12 as their highest level of educational attainment. 15% had completed a Cert 3 or 4, and 6.9% had completed an advanced diploma. Although the 17.4 average is higher than the overall Australian average for Year 12 completion, it's difficult to determine which group this is associated with as it's not identified. Due to the lower educational levels, these women may not understand how pregnancy and birth impacts their health. To continue, they may not understand the options that are available to them when deciding what they want for their pregnancy, birth, and postnatal period. More so, lack of choice impacts the decision-making process as there aren't many options to choose from. Lastly, the decrease in staff can impact the women's care. Staffing at the end of 2018 decreased to 14 doctors, 35 nurses, and 5 healthcare practitioners or professionals. This can be an issue as the lack of availability for healthcare. To continue, pregnancy, birth, and the postnatal period is women's business, and there may be a conflict of interest with male staff from the cultural beliefs of these women.
There are many factors influencing the provision of maternity services in rural and remote areas. These factors include economic, political, organisational, and cultural aspects, as well as a multitude of other elements at play. Economic factors play a pivotal role in determining one's access to maternity healthcare services in rural and remote areas. From the beginnings of the healthcare service, determined by government funding, which arbitrate what type of facilities the healthcare service will house, to equipment in the facility. Is there appropriate equipment for the services the facility offers? Is it up to date and frequently maintained? Are staff educated on how to properly use it? To the amount of staff in the facility, the experience of these team members, and their knowledge of the area and cultural awareness on customs and the birthing beliefs. The location of the facility and whether people can easily and cost-effectively access the service is also relevant. All these elements are influenced by economic factors in play. Another factor embedded is the economic state of the area, affecting the population's social determinants of health. Social determinants play a central part in the effect of economic factors on rural and remote populations, and therefore impact the provision of maternal healthcare services. Social determinants of health, as discussed earlier, incorporate elements such as ethnicity, economic status, the neighbourhood and built environments, health and healthcare access, as well as health literacy, community, and social factors and education. These determinants can all be linked back to economic factors. Does the person have economic stability and a safe, clean home to live in? This not only affects the individual's health, but their families as well, and can impact the willingness to travel of a pregnant woman to access maternity services. Are there appropriate healthcare facilities nearby to access? Has the individual reached a level of education where they can recognise when healthcare services are needed and how to access these services? Do they have the ability to purchase fresh produce to secure positive health outcomes for both themselves, their unborn child, and other living children? Can they afford medications and supplements if required? The 2016 census highlights details on the economic state of Thursday Island. Unemployment rates sit at 8% compared to the Australian average at 6.9%. A staggering 77.3% of the population rents their homes compared to the Australian average of 30.9%. Education levels are positive, with 17.4% reaching Year 12 compared with the Australian average of 15.7%. However, the unemployment rates indicate that after this education level is achieved, employment is not necessarily obtained. The weekly personal income and family income is also higher than the Australian average. However, this does not take into consideration that families are, on average, larger in size on Thursday Island, and that household expenses, such as fresh produce on the island, are higher due to the remote locality. As mentioned, there are many economic factors affecting maternity care, which are relevant to Thursday Island, both positive and negative. Some of these include one's access to both services, education and support, the service delivery in place, the available workforce to provide services, and the island's infrastructure. These are all impacted by Australians' economic standing as well as the economic status of the island's population. Given that there is a hospital located on Thursday Island, this is a positive for the island's population in regards to access of maternity services. Patient travel subsidy schemes are available if transfer is required to a larger facility, and there are options for emergency transfer if required. Thursday Island employs many locals in the healthcare team who are able to provide input and understanding about the local population's customs and beliefs. This is very important when providing culturally safe, women-centred care and enables new team members to be educated by individuals who are experts in the culture. The Remote Area Nursing Incentive Package is a great economic incentive for nurses and midwives wishing to work in rural facilities such as Thursday Island. It involves provision of monetary bonuses for working in a remote area, as well as relocation assistance and some free travel services. The midwives on Thursday Island are blessed with autonomy that is not always present in larger facilities and get to work in a tropical paradise. Although more government funding is needed, the facilities available to the people of Thursday Island are quite good, being a Level 3 CSCF maternity facility. This is a positive factor for the residents of Thursday Island and its surrounding areas. Some negative factors experienced with the provision of services can also include access. Although the maternity services are located in the hospital on Thursday Island and close in proximity, some locals may not feel comfortable in the hospital setting. It may also be difficult for people on neighbouring islands to access, both due to locality or regarding reluctance to leave home due to other children. Although there are programs in place to ensure culturally safe, women-centred care, some of the hospital policies and guidelines may not marry up with this provision of care. Some new staff may be unfamiliar with the island and may experience a culture shock and feel isolated from family and friends when travelling to work on Thursday Island. This can be detrimental to both themselves as well as the people they are caring for. Finally, although the hospital was at one point adequate, with population and technology advances, plus deterioration, new infrastructure is required. This all has government and political implications to allow for the economical input required to enact such changes. In 2010, the National Maternity Service Plan was introduced, hoping to reduce some of the disparities facing Australians living in rural and remote areas such as Thursday Island. Its key focuses were identified as 4 areas, these being patient access, service delivery, workforce, and infrastructure. The first priority was patient access. This priority aims at increasing communication regarding women's options for care and increasing access by expanding the range of models available in maternity care. It also aims at increasing access for families and women in rural Australia to high-quality maternity care and increasing access for women in Australia to information that supports their needs regarding maternity care in a culturally competent manner. The second priority discusses high-quality, evidence-based maternity care. It focuses on expanding culturally safe care for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the maternity setting. It also highlights the need for appropriate care in the maternity setting for women who may be exposed due to medical, socio-economic and other risk factors. The third priority is involved with the workforce involved with maternity care. It considers provisions to deliver a well-trained, qualified workforce to delivery of women-centred care. It also focuses on the provision of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander maternity workforce and alike a rural and remote maternity workforce. Priority 4 is involved with the infrastructure of maternity services. This is a huge undertaking and has major economic implications. Although major political and economic factors come into play with this service plan, it is a huge step to actually address some of the economic factors already impacting on maternity care in Thursday Island. If economically viable, these steps would make important changes to the provision of midwifery care on Thursday Island. If enacted, many issues surrounding workforce retention and also unemployment and socio-economic factors on Thursday Island could be addressed.
The Indigenous Australians of Thursday Island birth on country due to several factors, some of which are choice, some of which are beyond their control. One of the many contributing reasons can be narrowed down to the cultural beliefs of the women and their families. Cultural beliefs can entail being surrounded by female family members, being closer to land for comfort and spiritual needs, also to consume traditional foods and partake in birthing traditions such as face painting and tribal song and dance. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures are extremely family orientated, and this can be a deciding factor as to whether or not women will seek medical attention to birth if it could potentially restrict or prohibit their family members from attending. All women, no matter the culture, thrive in an environment where they feel safe and comfortable. More often than not, this comfort is associated with family and the familiarity and comfort they bring. This support can be very beneficial for a woman in how she may progress throughout labour. If a woman is consumed with fear and stress during labour, there is a noted recurring cycle of delayed progress. There is always an underlying fear from Indigenous cultures in regards to Western medicinal practices due to the institutionalised racism and unintentional colonisation they can be predisposed to. This fear, understandably, can be stemmed from the stolen generation that occurred 2 generations ago. However, the issues and stigma of white culture are still prevalent to this day. These issues that are still encountered within Australia create an impenetrable wall that prevents the more remote and rural communities from actively seeking healthcare, as this internal fear, in their opinion, still greatly outweighs their healthcare needs. If a woman is consumed with fear in a westernised hospital facility and is surrounded by unfamiliar people, her labour can become interrupted and lead to several clinical interventions, which can then further cement her fear of the government healthcare system. Fear can also stem from the stresses and responsibility of how she will afford travel to and from the clinics of Thursday Island Primary Healthcare Facility and the Townsville-based hospital, if she is of higher risk. If she has children, not only does this become another contributing factor as to why women may want to stay in their hometown to birth, but it also adds to the stresses of things that needs to be organised if she is expected to be away for a particular period of time. Family may always be an option for them, but for those who do not have any other extended family or don't have relatives that live close by, they may need to seek alternatives to childcare minding while they are absent. Lastly, some women may be influenced to birth in their hometown if they are actively in labour and cannot seek medical attention in time to birth at a proper healthcare facility. But living in the rural and remote parts of Australia, particularly in an area surrounded by small islands, such as Thursday Island, where there can be an ultimate factor to consider as well. If there is torrential rain and gusting winds, transport for medical services may be delayed until it is deemed safe to travel, which could ultimately leave a woman with no choice but to birth where she is. These social determinants can greatly influence the contributing factors leading to a woman birthing in their hometown instead of seeking the appropriate medical attention. With the existing healthcare services in rural and remote communities comes their own unique challenges and gaps within the maternity services. Mainly dependent on the funds supplied by the government, many facilities struggle to keep their doors open or supply the facilities with the appropriate staff and/or equipment. Some places also rely on the donations from the public to be able to continue providing healthcare to the surrounding remote and rural communities. These gaps are often overlooked, and an increasing number of facilities are closing down due to the lack of governmental support. The closure of these small healthcare services can mean the difference between people travelling 50 kilometres versus 300 kilometres to seek medical attention, hence why it is essential that these small clinics are well funded. This physical gap between services increases the mortality rate of those living rurally due to the lack of accessibility. There are flight services that may be available to some parts of rural and remote Australia, such as the Royal Flying Doctor Service. However, there are so many determining factors as to whether or not these flight services will be available to assist. There may be such things as an influx of emergencies, there may be dangerous weather prohibiting planes from flying safely, and there is also the need for staff to fill the positions of flight craft emergency services. These things can prevent the Flying Doctor Service from attending. These women, whom are situated in remote areas such as Thursday Island, are exposed and vulnerable to many of the gaps present within the current healthcare system. The lack of government support and funding means these women have a lack of option when it comes to seeking healthcare. With a lack of funding, lack of access and lack of support of clinical services, it severely limits the birthing options of the women and their families.
Birthing in the country is the most sacred, the most powerful thing that can happen to a woman, and it is sacred. It is holy. It is not to be known, only women. And that's what most of it is so important. We are Darpal. Darpal, we are holy women when we are giving birth, because it comes from the unseen to the mother's womb, and then it's born with flesh, blood and water. And women then is to be respected.